In an era when the differences between those who were left of center and those who were actual Communist Party members were often conveniently ignored in the minds of the public consciousness, most left-leaning teachers probably, and this is an assumption, determined that the best way to remain employed was to be apolitical or come across as neutral. Anti-communist crusaders came from all swaths of the U.S. political spectrum and included liberals. In the schools, conservative anti-communists often followed a path blazed by left and liberal anti-communists who did as much, and I think I'm going to argue, if not more, than conservatives to guarantee a chilling classroom atmosphere. So this paper today is going to detail how those liberal intellectuals framed their arguments about communist teachers not being allowed to teach in the public schools, but also how their arguments carried the day or how they were put to work in the schools. Nobody did more to discredit communist teachers than Sidney Hook, who began his intellectual career as a Marxist, but then remained in the pragmatic mold of his mentor, John Dewey. In his 1953 book, Heresy Yes, Conspiracy No, which was an elaboration of his part in a debate in the New York Times Magazine with Amherst president Alexander Meiklejohn, who was also kind of a Kantian idealist. Hook made in this book the definitive argument that communists should be denied teaching positions. He argued that party membership alone was proof of conspiracy and thus a violation of the principle of academic freedom. So, this was the end of the discussion as far as Hook was concerned. Communist Party members should be barred from teaching. Here's the question that Hook sought to answer. How is heresy different from conspiracy, and thus how much academic dissent was allowable in the schools? Hook made what he believed to be a clear distinction, despite the fact that I think this distinction was incredibly blurred during the 1950s. He wrote, and I quote, "Heresy is a set of unpopular ideas or opinions on matters of grave concern to the community. The right to profess publicly a heresy of any character on any theme is an essential element of a liberal society." That's the one half of it. But on the other hand, Hook continued, "A conspiracy, as distinct from heresy, is a secret or underground movement which seeks to attain its ends not by normal political or educational process, but by playing outside the rules of the game." In other words, communists were international conspirators whose intention was to overthrow the U.S. government, and as such should not be allowed to teach. In this sense, Hook is using Oliver Wendell Holmes' clear and present danger test. Just as free speech could be abrogated if it was a threat to the nation, teachers could be fired for political behavior deemed dangerous or conspiratorial. That Meiklejohn was one of the foremost opponents of Hook's position is no surprise, especially because he had previously, in publication, taken issue with the clear and present danger doctrine of Holmes. Meiklejohn considered Justice Holmes' interpretation of free speech dangerous, for it had, in his words, led to the annulment of the First Amendment rather than its interpretation. Meiklejohn argued for a stricter interpretation of the First Amendment. According to him, the First Amendment protected all political speech. He grounded his argument in what he considered the democratic categorical imperative. In other words, the risk of self-destruction was the risk that every democratic government had to take in order to continue to be democratic. To not take this risk was in essence assuring the destruction of self-government.